Hello kids, you're joining with the Form 1 third midterm first lesson, Participles of the Verb. Your lesson can be found on the Grammar to 14 textbook, page number 20 to 21. My objectives are that you may recognize participles and define participial phrase, form participial phrases on your own, and engage in exercises. Now let's look at the parts of a participial phrase. A participial phrase contains a participle and a phrase. Phrases could be seen in a complex sentence. These participial phrases cannot stand on its own, so it will be added to a main clause, which is a sentence with a meaning on its own. Now let's see how the participles are formed. The participle in a participial phrase can be the present participle, the past participle, or the perfect participle of the verb. The present participles can be formed by simply adding ing to the verb, but we won't be using any helping verbs such as am, is, are, was, were. So that is something that you should remember. And the past participle is the past participle of the given regular or the irregular verb. Perfect participles are formed using following methods. We can use having plus past participle of the verb, having plus been plus past participle of the verb, or else being to make the perfect participles. And I have provided some examples, and those are having seen, having been fed, and being the first in the class. Now let's see what is a participial phrase. A participial phrase is a phrase that looks like a verb but actually functions as an adjective, and it modifies a noun in the same sentence. A participial phrase consists of present or past or perfect participles with objects and modifiers. Now we are going to focus on forming a participial phrase. My first example is arriving at the accident, Ben discovered that it was too late. Arriving is the present participle to which is added a modifier beginning with the preposition at the accident to make it a participial phrase. So our participial phrase arriving at the accident is added to the main clause, Ben discovered that it was too late. And you might wonder who's the subject here. So in the example, Ben is the person who is doing the action, who is arriving. So Ben is the subject in our sentence, which is placed right after the end of the participial phrase. The second example is having signed the agreement with WHO, the government felt hopeful. Having signed is a perfect participle. An object is used to make the participial phrase, which is the agreement with WHO. So in our participial phrase, we have a participle and an object which is placed before the main clause, and in this main clause the government is a subject because the government has signed the agreement. Our next example is shouting loudly, the nurse hurried to the ICU. The example number 3 is given with an adverb, which is loudly. Shouting is the present participle here. So the nurse becomes the subject in this sentence. In this slide, we'll be focusing on the punctuation of a participial phrase. Firstly, if a participial phrase is at the beginning of a sentence, working late, someone fell asleep at his desk. So we have used a comma to separate it with the main clause. Working is a present participle Late is the adverb, so the complete participial phrase is separated with a red comma, as you have noticed. Secondly, if a participial phrase is at the middle of a sentence, we use 2 commas at the end of it and at the beginning of it. Example, the palace destroyed by the storm was never rebuilt. Destroyed, the past participle, and by the storm, the modifier. The complete participial phrase is separated with the sentence using commas at the beginning and at the end. Thirdly, if a participial phrase is at the end of a sentence, if the participial phrase is at the end of a sentence, we will use a comma to separate it. Example, the enemy waited for the soldier hidden behind the building. So, in this sentence, hidden behind the building, which is the participial phrase, is separated with the sentence using a comma. Next, let's focus on some special things to remember. A participial phrase must be close to the noun as much as possible. A participial phrase can appear at the beginning or middle or at the end of a sentence. A participial phrase should be separated by the main clause with commas. That was the end of the lesson, Participles of the Verb. Now you may be able to complete the starting point, going further and further still activities in page number 20 to 21. So I have given some further reference sites as well. Hope you'll enjoy the lesson. Goodbye.